What is going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here, Mike Kaye, for a Tuesday preview podcast. This is a rarity, and we won't have to do it again this year, right? They don't have another Thursday game.
They do not.
Yeah.
You are correct. Good for you.
So short week. So we're going to combine our midweek with our preview, as we talked about earlier. We're at the NovaCare Complex. We'll be heading out to Green Bay in the next couple of days. Have you ever been to Green Bay?
I have not.
Yes, this is our first time for both of us. We both were pretty ecstatic that it wasn't in December when the schedule came out.
Yeah. I mean, this is a bucket list game for me because
I
wanted to go to Lambeau.
Going to Lambeau would be cool. And as everybody describes, it's like a stadium like in the middle of a neighborhood, basically, which is like unlike anything else in the league. It's a little bit of a big game for the Eagles. They can't really afford to fall to 1-3. There's a lot to talk about. We'll get into the preview. We should hit a few news items first. So Ronald Darby, sounds like, is going to be missing at least a month by all reports. Hamstring injury. Like, this dude, at certain points, you have to accept that he's just an injury-prone player, and I don't know if he's ever going to be able to live up to his potential because of that. Since he's been here, he missed half of his first season with the Eagles. He missed 7 games in his second season with the Eagles, and now he's going to miss at least 4 games, most likely, if not more. Like, what? I know you've always been high in his like potential, but are you kind of like moving on from that? Him living up to it, yeah.
You have to. I mean, he's here on a 1-year deal. You've got you don't cut your losses, obviously, but I think it's time to see what the kid's got. You know what I mean? Sidney Jones, Avonte Maddox, Rasul Douglas have played well during stretches. Now's their time to really kind of lock in their claws on those 3 starting jobs. It seems like Avonte Maddox is the nickel guy for the foreseeable future. But, Rasul Douglas and Sidney Jones both have 1 more year left on their contract. Sidney Jones has actually played relatively well. Rasul Douglas has played
1 more year after this, by the way, you mean?
What did I say?
You just said 1 more year left.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Just making sure that's clear.
Yeah, so Darby's done after this year. So that's why you need to kind of start. Every sign's pointing to, hey, just play the young guys. And so now is the time really for them to kind of show their stripes. And I think Rasul Douglas is kind of getting the call at the right time because him versus Devontae Adams seems like a really good matchup for him. Size-wise,
he makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so Jones just needs to keep playing the way he's playing because they believe he can be a number 1 corner, and if he can continue to play the way he did against Atlanta and Detroit, I think he'll eventually build up into a pretty good starter.
Yeah, no, I was going to say this is going to be a very important stretch for Sidney, just kind of where you find out if he's worth that draft pick they use. Because, I mean, it's easy to do hindsight 2020. I think the draft pick made a lot of sense at the moment, but there's a lot of like really talented guys that were drafted after him.
Sure.
Not even necessarily like corner, like Juju Smith-Schuster, Alvin Kamara. I think there was a couple other really good receivers. Like, so just the point being that this is his chance. They're giving it to him. They're handing him the keys. They don't really have another choice. And, in a few weeks, if Jalen Mills comes back and Sidney Jones is struggling, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they would turn back to Jalen Mills because they really like him.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be surprising at all. Mills can return in week 7. Crevon LeBlanc can return in week 9. So, the next few games are privet time. You want to cement your status as a starter, go ahead. Rasul Douglas has been looking for this opportunity the entire time he's been here. Here's his opportunity to kind of prove that he deserves it in front of everybody. And I think Sidney Jones, if he can stay healthy and continue to play the way he has since, over the past 2 weeks at least, he can develop into a dependable starter. Avonte Maddox has struggled a little bit, and I think we haven't talked about that enough.
Yeah, he's been the weak point of Darby was too, but Darby's gone now, so he's the remaining weak point.
But again, they're taking him on and off the field. And,
I like it.
That makes it difficult. But it is what it is. And they need to figure out their depth situation because they only have 3 healthy corners at this point.
Yeah. Even just talking about Jalen Mills, that just made me think, so maybe must-win is thrown around a little too much, but I feel like Thursday night is a turning point game because if they can pull out a upset victory on Thursday, then you can feel pretty good about what's coming up because, you have Alshon Jeffrey. It sounds like it's probably going to be back on Thursday. Goddard should be getting healthier. Camus Grugier-Hill. Deshaun Jackson should be back for the Jets game. And then as you get, to week 7, Jalen Mills is eligible to come back. Maybe Jernigan is coming closer. So if they can come out of this and they're 2-2 as opposed to 1-3, then the season looks a lot more optimistic. But if they lose on Thursday, then they're in a lot of trouble regardless of guys coming back.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm a big believer that you can only really go 1-3 in one quarter of the season and still have a successful, jaunt. And so 1-3 to start off with, you're out of your, get out of jail free cards, in my opinion. And so I think the Eagles are getting healthier. They're on the mend. They've been dealt some pretty rough breaks, literally, as of late. And, they coming up with a win on Thursday, which this is the type of game that the Eagles kind of win anyway. Their backs are against the wall, similar to the Rams game last year. They had the Giants game the year before. When their backs are against the wall, they tend to play pretty well. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, this will test their mettle this week. So let's talk about Alshon real quick. So Doug told the Green Bay media on the conference call with them that he expects Alshon and Dallas Goedert to play. We'll hear from Doug tomorrow. I imagine he'll say something along the same lines. I'm my biggest question, because he still wouldn't have had a full practice since he suffered the injury. Like, is he a decoy? Is he going to be like Goddard was last week, where you're playing him a little bit and he kind of shouldn't have? Like, I'm not like, his presence definitely helps, but I'm still not sure it's a great idea to throw him out there.
Well, I mean, you also have to factor in the fact that the Packers are really good against the pass, so how much are you really dictating the passing game by having Jeffrey out there? So, I mean, I think Goddard will play better. I think he, having that game, that lightly used game,
with a bad drop.
With a bad drop will help him kind of reconfigure his health a little bit. I think he'll be able to kind of re-engage with his route running and his speed, because he looked lethargic the other day. Jeffrey, I mean, I guess you use him as a decoy. You try to take their best corner away, Jair Alexander, who I think is a legit baller.
Man, that trade that they did with the Saints, like moving down, just looks like a genius trade.
Yeah, for sure. And I think
to get him.
Yeah, I think this game is about the Eagles' offense versus the Packers' defense. As much as Aaron Rodgers is in the game, I'm not trying to overshadow him, but having Alshon, at least as a presence, might help. I don't think it really turns the tide. Yeah,
especially because he's clearly not going to be 100%. So before we get into like the full-on preview, so we just did hear from Mike Rowe today, and the drops obviously were the biggest storyline coming out of Sunday night's game, or Sunday afternoon's game. Sorry, it all feels like a night because by the time we're done, it's nighttime.
I'm still tired.
Yeah. So I mean, the biggest message has been they just need to focus better. And Mike Rowe was asked like a good question, like, so what exactly does that mean? Because you would think that they should know to focus already. Like, so were you satisfied with his response to, and the coach's response to the drops? And like, I know everybody gives Gabe Kapler at the Phillies a lot of crap because he doesn't come out and criticize his guys, and these are coaches that don't really do that either. Jim Schwartz occasionally will. He'll like take shots subtly. But like, what were you satisfied with the coach's response to the questions? Because I think after 2 weeks of some really, really bad drops, I think it's fair to like question like what the heck's going on.
Well, I think the answer is obvious. It's execution. It's from an execution standpoint. It's the coaches can't say, "Hey, hands, catch," you know what I mean?
Catch
like
ball. Yeah.
It's one of those things where it is about concentration. And what Gross said to that question was, sometimes you can get bumped in coverage, or you could focus. You could hear footsteps, and that takes your mind or your eyes off the ball for just a split second, and that split second can mean everything. It's just so weird that it all happened at once.
Yeah.
But, stuff like that's not going to happen on a, weekly basis. I know the last 2 games have been rough, but I don't see the trend continuing just because it can't. These guys are professionals. And if that's the problem, then you need to
get rid of all of them.
I
mean, that's extreme, but I'm just saying.
I'm surprised they haven't done an oil change with the bottom of the wide receiver depth chart already this week. But then again, you have a short week, so
maybe Greg Ward gets a little more looks this week. I don't know.
Maybe.
Why have him on the roster if you're not going to use him?
Something Doug Peterson's brought up a couple of times this week and last week was the benching of Nelson Aguilar, Peterson's first year.
Yeah, in 2016.
2016.
Nelson's second year.
Right. It was a prolonged issue.
Yeah.
Well, if the issue
still here.
Yeah, it's still here in week 4, that's a prolonged issue. So maybe it could be, Nelson Aguilar taking a seat.
And I think part of it is they don't really have other options as part of the problem. So I wanted to get in the running backs. That's a good segue. And so they do have other options at running back for if Miles Sanders they have one other option in reality. If Miles Sanders keeps fumbling in the way he did. I know you tweeted out his best run, and it kind of like blew up a little bit. I think there are people questioning it. There are people supporting it because Jordan Howard is like galvanized this fan base. Yeah. Like it's insane. Anything you tweet about Jordan Howard now, it's like get him the ball. But like we both agree that they should be giving Jordan Howard the chance to like get in the groove. Like that, his numbers are. We both said this after the game weren't an accurate reflection of like what happened. I don't think. But I just the way they've been talking, I don't get the sense that much is going to change with this running back rotation.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that he gets more touches. Yeah,
Sanders is clearly more explosive. Like he should be on the field, but
yeah, I think they need to start with Howard.
Yes.
I think he's the guy that can get the offensive line to blocking rhythm. You saw what happened in the third quarter of that Washington Redskins game where they basically just let him run down the field and find a rhythm, and then the offense was pretty much unstoppable at that point. I think, a lot is made of, oh, well, he had that one big run against the Lions and then was like, he got like 10 yards after that. Well, yeah, you're taking a guy who's used to being the workhorse, a guy who's used to finding his rhythm because he's getting the ball a lot, and you're asking him to do spot duty. That's not going to work. That's just not a recipe for success. If he's built a certain way, you have to do that. If a guy is a really good route runner, but he's not very fast, you don't want him just running 9 routes. You know what I mean? So or go routes, to be more exact.
Yeah.
I just think, like, when you look at what Howard has accomplished over his career, I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt to maybe start a couple of games and kind of get that offensive line moving. And also, we'll get into this in the preview, this is the perfect matchup to kind of unleash him.
Because they have an exploitable rush defense, whereas their pass defense is really, really good.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you see the rotation? Do you see it playing out that way, or do you think they go to Sanders in the beginning again?
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing with this team. Like, there are things we say every week that I don't get why they're not doing so and so, and then until they do that, so they're not going to change.
So I watched are we getting into our preview?
I just want to cover one more like problem area that I think needs to be addressed before we go preview, and that's the pass rush. Jim Schwartz is still like towing the company line of like you can't just focus on the one thing. But like it's not just sacks specifically. Like they're not getting enough pressure, they're not finishing the pressures. Like I think it's a legit thing to be concerned about after 3. I personally wasn't satisfied with the way he's been responding to those. I just don't get it. I know he's not going to. If you ask him to criticize somebody, he won't do it. But the defensive end's not having a single sack. This team having 2 sacks. Like so, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it makes sense that numbers would be like this, but it's like. Especially so with him. So I think he completes something like 75 to 80% of his passes when he has a clean pocket, and he completes 35% or less over the last 2 years when he's under pressure.
Yeah, if you hit Aaron Rodgers,
but they haven't hit anybody. So
right.
So and if they don't hit Aaron Rodgers, he's going to light them up, especially with a cornerback group that's banged up.
So what I'll say is this: he hasn't. The Packers' offense, while it still has Aaron Rodgers and there's some pretty numbers in there. They haven't really been scoring much. They're averaging about 19, I think, 0.3 points per game.
It's been a defensive thing for them.
Right, which they're only allowing 11.7 points per game. So, listen, they're going to have their spots. Jim Schwartz is very familiar with Aaron Rodgers. He's familiar with some of the offensive linemen. Look, they're going to have to manufacture sacks. They're going to have to stunt. They're going to have to send blitzes. They're going to have to move guys around. I think Brandon Graham's going to have to play on the interior a little bit more so he can get mismatches. Josh Sweat needs to show better effort. They're going to probably have to play Deshaun Hall a little bit. I mean, this is, you have to make changes, whether it's personnel or scheme. And I think Schwartz needs to do that now. You and I are pretty big advocates of his. They've been incredible against the run. If you look at their run-stopping numbers, they're really good. Like, I think they're second in the league against the run.
Like if you remove the play where they didn't have enough players on the field, with J.D. McKissick running for 44 yards, I think it was. Then you remove that. I know you can't just do the remove that game, but I think in this case you can because they didn't have enough guys on the field. And they only gave up, I believe, something like 30 rushing yards or like 40 rushing yards.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where... I think they're so invested in stopping the run, which is great, and making teams one-dimensional. If you make this just a passing game for the Packers, they can kind of deal because they have Aaron Rodgers. And I think, you've got to be able to get pressure, and you got to be able to get pressure early. I think the Eagles' offense needs to do their part in kind of building leads. That's part of the issue, reason why they haven't been getting a lot of pressure. So, yeah, I mean, you got to force Aaron Rodgers to make mistakes, and you got to hit him. And if the Eagles don't do that, this is going to be a long day. All
right, so let's get into our preview now. I know you wrote down a bunch of the matchups that you're most intrigued by. Like, what do you got? What's the number one?
Well, Zadarius Smith is the best free agent signing in the league this year, period.
Shaquille Barrett's
pretty you can say Shaquille Barrett, but
especially relative to expectations too,
Yeah, but Zadarius Smith has been like something special. Like you can look at his numbers. He's got 3 sacks, but if you watch him, the way he impacts the passing game, it's really impressive. I mean, the Buccaneers are 1-2. The Packers are 3-0 and have one of the best defenses in the league. So that's why I'm going to give Zadarius Smith the edge. He's also multidimensional. He can stop the run as well.
Offensive line hasn't been great outside of Brandon Brooks so far. So
correct. Yeah. So I think Zadarius Smith versus Lane Johnson is going to be a very interesting matchup. We've seen Ryan Kerrigan get the better of Lane Johnson in the past. I think Zadarius Smith's a pretty similar matchup. He's just been on fire and pretty much unblockable. He's drawing a lot of holding penalties. He's getting to the quarterback and then some. He had 2 sacks against the Broncos last week. On the left side, it doesn't get really any easier. Rashawn Gary, their first-round pick, he's from New Jersey.
I got him, actually, yeah.
He has been rotating with Preston Smith, and they both had sacks against the Broncos. Both looked really good. Gary's got a really nice mix of speed and power. Preston Smith's a good rotational player who's got some veteran experience. Kenny Clark up the middle. That entire front is really, really good. And it's helping the secondary take advantage of mistakes because the defensive front is forcing pressure, and QBs, look, they've played Kirk Cousins, Joe Flacco, and Mitch Trubisky. It's not like that's like the pendulum isn't swinging upward with those 3 quarterbacks. But they have been able to create mistakes. They have been able to take advantage of quarterbacks trying to play hero ball, Carson Wentz. So that's the concern I have. We talked about the secondary a little bit earlier. Darnell Savage versus Zack Ertz is going to be a big game. Or is going to be a big matchup.
I mean, there's going to be double on Ertz too, and he's a really good player to be one of those two. So.
Yeah, I mean, they could double him. They could. I think Savage can take him one-on-one. I mean, not like shut him down, but I think he can have a pretty good.
You don't need to go one-on-one with him though, with the way the Eagles receivers are.
That's true. But I think, Savage is a guy who's made a lot of opportunistic plays. He's a really good player. Jair Alexander, whether he draws Alshon Jeffrey or Nelson Aguilar, he's probably going to get the better of that matchup, being that Alshon's injured and Nelson is really inconsistent. And then on the offensive side of the ball, we'll get into like the kind of the minutia of the matchup later, but Devontae Adams is the guy that everybody needs to pay attention to. He's probably going to move around. I'd imagine Rasul and Sidney both stick to their sides. Adams is going to be a tough out for this team. And he's got a big body. He uses it well. He's got some speed. He could bully Jones in theory, and he can outrun Rasul. So they're going to have to shut this guy down. Aaron Rodgers always looks for him. It's going to be tough. Jimmy Graham's kind of fallen off a little bit, but I think he will be able to be involved pretty early and often. So Malcolm Jenkins is the guy to watch. Kenny Clark versus Jason Kelsey and Isaac Seumalo is going to be definitely worth watching as well because of how poorly Isaac Seumalo played against the Falcons. Look, this is a tough matchup in every which way. But it is also a game where there are going to be opportunities for this Eagles offense. Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, they'll have room to run. Dalvin Cook and Madison, I forgot his first name. They did really well for the Vikings. They put up a ton of yardage last week. Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay balled out. They've allowed 3 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 games, and those weren't just like fluke rushing touchdowns. Counter to that, they've only allowed 1 passing touchdown in the season, and they've had 4 picks. So you're inclined to run against them. And they're going to force you to run and beat them on the run. Neither of those, I mean, even with that said, while the running games have been successful, the Packers haven't allowed more than 16 points in a game. So you're going to have to be multidimensional, but you're going to have to take advantage of the running game when you can. I think Carson Wentz is better than any quarterback that they've played so far. That said, this team doesn't really have wide receiver weapons. Zack is really the most dependable guy and maybe the only dependable guy on this roster. They need Dallas Goedert to play at a high level coming off that injury. And, I would try to throw the ball to the running backs as much as possible. Darren Sproles, Miles Sanders, they both have proven they can catch the ball and make plays upfield. Screen game. I mean, it's been non-existent. Now's the time.
Yeah. And Darren Sproles has only been inching towards the top 5. He needed 41 yards to go ahead of Tim Brown going into last week. I think he wound up with like 3 yards in the game. So
hey, man, take advantage of your season back,
So at that rate, I don't know if he'll even if he gets 3 yards a game. I don't know if he's going to get the record.
I think this could be a decent game for them. They got to stop with the delayed handoffs, the slow reaction read runs.
Yeah,
just hand the ball off to a guy and let him go, find a hole. Like that's really what it is. I will say this. The Eagles do not use a fullback very often, but they used one on the goal line.
You love talking about fullbacks.
With Alex Ellis against the Lions, scored easily on a 1-yard touchdown run. The Broncos and the Vikings were able to, pick up a lot of yardage using a lead blocker and a fullback. So
you just want fullbacks to come back. You want to make fullbacks great again.
This league goes through trends, man. Fullbacks coming back.
And the Patriots just lost one, but they had one on the roster already waiting.
Yeah, see, they're the smartest team in the league, and they use a fullback.
Touche.
Yeah, so I expect Ellis to stay on the 53 man.
That was like his only snap he played, by the way. So they basically only played with one tight end again because Goddard didn't play until the second half.
He had one play, I think, where he was also they were in 12 personnel. But I mean, look. Ellis is a guy that's going to be mostly used on special teams and be that emergency third tight end. But, if you can find ways to use him and make him a lead blocker, even...
he only played one snap last week.
Oh, he did only? Okay, so maybe that was a flag that he got called.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was, yeah.
Because I remember seeing him in. I was like, oh, Alex Ellis in there.
By the way, it's weird that they didn't play Goddard in the first half and then played him in the second half. That tells me they were getting desperate.
I'm wondering if they only had like a package for him, plays, and that was
he both gave up a sack and had probably the worst literal drop of the game. Maybe the timing of it wasn't as bad as the other ones. But,
and they scored a touchdown on that drive.
But 2 minutes later, so yeah.
I will say this: when Joe Banner said this the other day on Twitter, they did a year study on tight ends blocking defensive ends, and he basically called it common malpractice because they give up so many sacks. And that's kind of what happened with the Broncos in this past game. I mean, you can't have Darius Smith get blocked by a tight end.
I mean, the Broncos are bad.
They are.
By the way.
I think the Eagles will get some opportunities for points. I don't think they're going to be held under 11.7 points per game. But right now, it's just not a very favorable matchup. I think this will be a low-scoring affair.
And the timing of it couldn't be worse either.
I mean, look, if the Eagles can pull this off, it's going to be a huge momentum boost.
That's what I was going to say. So it was 2 years ago today that Jake Elliott made a 61-yard field goal that kind of changed that 2017 season if you think about it. So in the back of my head, I'm thinking, so if they win this game, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it came down to Jake Elliott with a big kick again, honestly. Because if they're going to win this game, it's going to be a close one. They don't blow teams out anymore unless they're a bad team. So
yeah, and it's very weird. So the last 2 games, I've called the point differential correctly,
but just the wrong team.
Yeah.
So we can get. So I'll do some rapid fire predictions, and we'll do our game ones.
Yeah. So pay attention to that. That's called a tease.
All right, some rapid fire ones I just came up with right before coming in here. So do you think? So I guess how many carries do you think Jordan Howard gets this week? 12. Are you satisfied with that number though? If that's what it is, you are.
Yeah. Again, it's not about quantity.
Yeah, it's about where they come. Yeah. Which is like the pushback that you got on that. Like I totally agree with your point about how let the guys get. like I heard you talking to some other reporters about this earlier. Like with a rotation can work fine if you have guys that know how to work within a rotation and don't need a few carries to get going. Like the rotation they had in 2017, the Garrett Blount, a veteran guy, you can put him in and he'll get chunk yardage. Jay Ajayi maybe was the one that needed to get into a groove, and then you had like Clement, who was kind of a guy who could come in and get some short yardage. I don't know if these are those kind of guys.
Yeah, Sproles is the one guy who's accustomed to a rotation.
But even he's 36. Like, can you really rely on him coming in cold?
Right. You're looking at Miles Sanders, who was a one-year wonder, who was literally the workhorse for Penn State. And then you've got a guy in Jordan Howard, who, he rotated with Tariq Cohen, but he also was able to take drives for himself, And I think, like I said, if you're taking a guy who's used to being a workhorse and making him a spot duty guy, it's just not a recipe for success. And after his big run the other day, they basically took him out. So,
and honestly, if the receivers are going to be this bad again, just run some 21 personnel. Miles Sanders looks like the best deep threat without Deshaun there, which is insane.
For sure.
He had 73 receiving yards, and his last season in Penn State, he had like 163 or something like that for the whole year. So.
I will say this. They used Big V in 12 personnel.
He looked pretty good there, too.
Yeah, he did a great job. I would expect them to do that pretty significantly in this game. There will be opportunities to do that. And also, when you factor in, if they don't want to use a fullback, that's probably the right route to go.
All right. Will Greg Ward get his first NFL catch this week?
Yes.
Cool. That'll be a cool moment. I wonder if he looks good, if he like jumps ahead of like JJ in the rotation, honestly, because JJ hasn't really shown much reason, but they don't really give up on guys, I guess. But anyway, so who scores the Eagles touchdowns this week? Do you think?
Howard.
All of them. I just mean in general.
Howard and Carson.
Will a defensive end finally get his first sack this week?
Yes.
Really? You think?
Timmy Jernigan.
Defensive end.
Oh, a defensive end? Yes.
Who do you think gets it?
I'm going to go with Vinny Curry.
Vinny Curry. He actually played decently last week.
Yeah,
by the way.
They used him as an interior rusher. Like I said.
And will Jake Elliott win the whole damn thing again if they win?
I think this game is going to come down to field goals, whether it's the last field goal or not. I think he's going to be pretty active in this game.
All right, what's your game prediction? What do you got?
I think it's going to be 17-13.
Oh, yeah, low scoring.
Yeah, look, the Packers haven't scored a lot, and the Eagles don't really have a lot of weapons. It makes sense. So that's a 4-point differential. So when the Eagles end up beating the Packers 20-16, you can be like, oh my God.
So the reverse psychology thing we got going on. I had Packers 28, Eagles 21.
Ooh, that's a lot of points.
Mostly because if the Eagles don't get a pass rush on Aaron Rodgers, I just think he's going to roast them. And like we were saying, until they prove to me that they can get that pass rush, I have no reason to believe that they will. So that's kind of where I stand with that. Any last final words you want to say on this game before we keep going, before we end this?
Deuces.
That's your final words?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so, check back on it. Actually, no, we did get a lot of comments. I did say I would read some of them, so I'll go pull that up real quick. All right, so you guys were awesome with the comments this week. I think we got 90-something. We're not going to be reading all of them, but keep that coming, especially after the game on Thursday night. It'll be a late recorded podcast, so you'll probably wake up to it unless you're loco. Let's see what we got here. Sadak Kwan says, why did they sign Darby again anyway? Stupid GM move. Well, they actually traded for him, but...
Yes, they did.
So how do you look back on that trade, actually? I think that's a fair question at this point.
Here's the thing. So a lot of people are going to say the Bills won that trade because they got the third-round pick. Well, the Eagles got back Jordan Matthews the next year and made the playoffs 2 straight years.
Not because of Darby, though.
Not because of Darby, but, it's more nuanced than that. That's what I'm saying. Cool, they traded Jordan Matthews in a third-round pick for Darby, still won a Super Bowl. Darby was pretty good in the playoff push. He wasn't very good in the Super Bowl, but outside of that, he played well when he was in the game. When he
rarely plays.
Right, but Jordan Matthews was horrible there.
I think it has more to do with the third-round pick than Jordan Matthews.
Yeah, but a third-round pick's a third-round pick. What are you going to do? Spend it on...
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't know if the Eagles necessarily won the trade, but I don't know if that means it was a good trade.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my point. Yeah. I don't think they lost the trade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You went after a athletically gifted corner with some talent.
I think it made a lot of sense. They had no real cornerback talent at the time.
HELE Manga 208 says that we need a new offensive coordinator. The calls from Mike Groh haven't been as loud this year.
Okay. Let me stand up on this desk.
Don't do that. It's really wobbly.
Whoa. Okay, cool. I caught my balance. Yeah, so now that I have my balance back, which is necessary for this conversation, look, the expectations for my grow are based on the expectations for Frank Reich. And that's fine, but we also don't know how the roles have changed. Deuce Staley, who was promoted to assistant head coach, probably has more say in that room than he did before. Jeff Stoutland has a ton of say in that room, too. Mike Groh, for what it's worth, has been praised by pretty much every player I've talked to for his ability to teach and his ability to, convey a message and get across scheme points. That doesn't mean he is the guy that's organizing all the plays that Doug Peterson calls, by the way. I'm not defending Mike Groh. I just think,
we don't know what to criticize him for.
Right. It's another thing with everybody constantly is saying, hey, somebody needs to get on this training staff. Well, the Eagles, by design, don't allow us to
so we
really poke and prod.
So they can't really defend themselves.
Right. So it's one of those things where I think Mike Groh takes heat because of press conferences. He's a bad quote. For the fan base, he is. And I think, they're not happy with his responses. Some people don't have great, rapport in a press conference. It just happens. I almost wish that Carson Wentz was judged the way that Mike Groh is in press conferences. But again, I think it's more nuanced than the plays themselves with Mike Groh.
All right, that makes sense. All right. All right. NIK MX Forever says the offensive line is terrible and the receivers aren't the greatest.
Well, PFF disagrees with you on one of those things. They call them the second best offensive line through through 3 games.
They've given up 10 pressures the last 2 weeks, but JHot247 says, I always said a loss sucks, but it always makes for good sports talk the whole week. He's not wrong about that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Let's see. YRNLOUWOP. Yern Luwap says the Eagles are too emotionally attached to some of these players.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair criticism.
That was the Jalen Mills going thing for a while.
Well, no, I think it's Jalen Mills. I think it's Jason Peters.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, Jalen Mills was the obvious one with that.
Yeah.
Let's see. That guy 111 says the Lions aren't a good football team? ? You Eagle fans are in that denial stage right now. The Lions controlled the whole game while the Eagles was playing catch up.
Did we say that they were bad?
I mean, I was saying how the Lions kept trying to hand the Eagles the game.
They were trying to hand
and I don't think they're good, to be honest. But the Eagles just lost that game more than the Lions wanted, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree with. They're not a bad. I don't think they're a bad team, but whatever.
All right, whatever. I'll read some of this, but Michael Johnson says somehow no one mentions the coach as the biggest issue is. I'm not saying he is, so why do you want to? But he's definitely close to one of the biggest issues here. Play calling has been uninspiring and really lazy. How about a screen pass or two, maybe an RPO or two, something to get Detroit off balance, especially when you haven't used it all season. You have the ball at their 50 with 2 timeouts left. How about making the game a little easier for Carson and our 3rd or 4th string receivers? The run was abandoned. You get the point where he's going with.
Yeah, I actually thought Doug called a relatively good game in the first half. They have run RPOs this season. They had 2 against Atlanta that I specifically remember. But yeah, the screen game, we brought that up earlier. I just don't understand. That was such a huge part of this offense. It's just kind of fallen by the wayside, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah. Texas Birds with a Z instead of an S on both words. Bruh, it's a problem when you have a whole highlight reel of drops. He's not wrong.
I concur. I don't really would you say that.
Virginia Edmond says the turnover margin is 3-1, and I don't know if we can win with these players. People are just so mad right now.
I don't blame them.
I mean, this was right after the game, to be fair, too. Ashtar Sharan says a lot of blame to go around, including the referees. We got a few people who are mad that we didn't blame the referees more.
Doug Peterson openly said the OPIs were...
Although at least one of them wasn't, it looked like.
One of them was...
Or it's questionable,
One of them was a ticky-tack.
Yeah, it was Matt Collins,
the Matt Collins one. But the Darren Sproles one was absolutely a push-off. Yeah, you could say that there were some questionable calls in there, I guess. But I think when you get to the point where you're blaming referees when you've had 7 drops and 2 fumbles in the span of 2 drives and all that other stuff. I mean, it's one of those things where it kind of gets flushed out. Look, every game the referees have bad games. Like, it's just commonplace. But, there were some bad calls against the Lions, too. So I think to blame the referees and get so emotionally distraught over their calls, I don't know, man. Not trying to call you out.
I totally agree. Sean Sines says Wentz is playing like a top 10 to 12 QB this year. Good, but not good enough to elevate his team. I'm not placing this loss on him, though. I think that was basically what we were saying.
I think you got a good performance out of him. I didn't think it was a great performance.
UNO Velasquez says if we had Jalen Mills and Cravon, we're 3-0.
Yeah. Maybe. Both of them are good in the red zone, so
I don't know.
That's fair.
I still don't know what Cravon's role was going to be at the start of the season.
He was going to be his gunner.
I meant on defense, yeah.
And he would have been a rover probably as a corner.
All right, this guy's Cube Squared says there's a lot of misspellings here. 1, Chris Long. 2, Jordan Matthews. 3, Jay Ajayi equals free agents that know the system. Why aren't these so-called analysts speaking it out? A couch needs to be fired, and people need to stop the Jim Swartz talk. I'm going with Doug. He's a pushover. So he wants them to sign those 3 guys and fire Doug Peterson, basically.
I'm trying to think about how you fire a couch.
I know. It must be an uncomfortable couch, man.
I don't know, man. There was one time I threw a couch off a second-story building, but yeah, that's all I got. Sorry, I don't know.
Eagles fan Quet Eagles Nation says we gonna win. MF's sleeping. Sleeping on the Eagles.
Okay.
Goku.
What's an MF?
Goku. This is a children's program. We can't talk about that. Goku LeBron says fire our strength and conditioning coach now. A lot of firings happening.
Ooh, calling for heads after 3 weeks. I can only imagine.
Dirty Burger. Oh, shut up. The Eagles will be fine, and I'm a Raiders fan. We're done before the season even started. We have Raiders listeners now. That's good.
Ron Jaworski bringing people together.
PF Sif. Wentz made more tackles than Darby and Fletcher Cox. Let's see here.
Always like a good staff.
Ibrahim Abdel Karim says Jordan Howard needs 15-plus carries. That man is a bulldozer.
I got nothing. We've already talked about that.
Jeff Spahar says Philadelphia, LOL. He could be talking a lot of things there. Maybe they're talking about the guy who made the Nelson Aguilar reference after saving babies out of a burning building. Hero. I don't know. Hero. Let's see here. This is what I've been saying. Ray Gun Sports, LOL, we Philly fans really changed our tune on Jordan Howard pretty quickly. That's so true. This whole offseason, people were like, he's not that good. Let's see here. Whoa. Marcus Beeman says Green Bay 48, Philadelphia 7.
That would be disastrous.
That'd be Saints level bad.
Somebody's probably getting fired after that.
Yeah, if it's that bad.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Any other ones? This guy said that he's unsubscribed because we didn't critique the officials enough. So thanks for listening to that episode. At least.
I always feel like when you comment that you're unsubscribing, you probably listen to one podcast.
Yeah, that's episode.
True. But then again, looking forward to the comments this week.
Yeah. So Thursday night, Friday morning, comment on our pod. We'll do one after the game. We'll sound groggy and tired, I'm sure, but we're not going to complain about it. Okay, guys? All right, thanks for listening. Write us reviews, leave us the comments, and we'll talk to you Thursday night.